All right. Now, to change pace, before we do that, does anyone have any questions about the stuff we did yesterday, event listeners, the homework we just kind of went over? Was there anything that was unclear that we'd like to spend a little bit more time on?
I just feel like I'm making it harder than it really is.
Yeah.
I'm overthinking.
Think less, Karif. Think less. Let the computer do your thinking for you. Programming is it doesn't have to be this challenging. And once we, hopefully we can show you examples that will help you find your way out of those sorts of situations with as little effort as possible. And oftentimes, what I'll find myself doing, just to set like a concrete example for you, is that I'll write something once, and then as I'm working on it, be like, oh, there's an easier way, and I'll end up rewriting it, right? Like, I could have made that to-do list application way more complicated than the version that we ended up with. And maybe what would be fun to do is you guys all started working on your own to-do list applications with a different kind of style and look and feel. Finish it up. Make it interactive. Make it actually store data somewhere. Make it change the page. We don't. I wrote this complicated render to-do list function that is creating a bunch of elements, but you could have made yours super simple and just add elements to the inner HTML. Right? You already know how to write HTML, so using the inner HTML property in JavaScript is just saying, shove this string of HTML into the inner HTML property. So we built one right now together, kind of. You have your own, keep working on it, right? And put that in your portfolio so you can show off what you've done, right? Show off that you can build a project from start to finish. That's what I would encourage you to do, for sure. Go ahead, Josh.
Can you explain the target that you used in your example there on line 50, I think it is?
Yeah. Event.target.
One more time.
Yeah. So event, when we're in an event listener, is the argument that is passed to us from the browser, right? So event has a whole bunch of stuff on it, and we took a look at it yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So when we said console.log event, right? If I was just to click new list in here, right? I'm going to see this event object. It's a submit event. I can click inside of it in the console explorer here. I can see the target, right? That's the one we're actually using, which is the form, and it has two inputs in it, right? So I could have, just through exploring this, I could have said, target 0. What does event.target0 equal? Let's actually store this in var submit. Let's make this submit event object, right? I like to, because this event object only exists inside this function, if I want to play with something, I can go var event object equals null, right? And then I can come in here and say event object equals event. So I'm making a copy of this that I can play with. So I'm going to test this, right? So submit event, this is the thing. If I type event object in here, that is the copy that I just saved. So I can play with this now. I can play with this in my console and see what I have available to us. Now I knew that I could do event.target, which is the form itself, event.target. Event object.target. That's the form. And I could have said 0, which is one of the inputs, and then event.target1 is the other input, the submit. But I also know that these are accessible by the name attribute, right? So I can do event.target.add list. Add list. And that's going to give me my reference to my input. And if I type .value in here, right, when this form was submitted, the event.target.addList.value was ASDF. And you can't see that here because we already have this render to-do list down here. If I take this out, if I comment this out, and I type ASDF, my event object, right, currently has, at the time of this line of code being set, right, has a .value property. Oh my gosh, more and more and more. .value of ASDF. That's all I care about. I just need to get this string. Your approach, Josh, was perfectly reasonable. I'm doing it a backwards way, right? I probably would have done exactly what you did and just been in here and said, like, yeah, I need an ID here. Add list. I would probably give it the same name. And then I could have written, where are we at here? I could have written document.getElement by ID add list .value, right? the exact same thing. I'm calling the dot value property of that input. Because I did not have an ID on it in the first place, I wanted to show you that you can access it from other directions. Event.target is our form. .addList is our input inside of it. Or I could have gone target 0, which is that same input. The document object model gives you a bunch of different ways to access HTML elements. I could have said, here, I'll show you. All right, so here's our full path, right? Window.document.html.body. Right? I could have typed this all out. Window.document.html.body. Div document.forms, maybe? Document.forms. I could have gone this direction. 0 dot 0, right? So there is an array of forms inside of window.document that gets me to that same place. There's like 15 different ways to slice and dice how we get to an element. I prefer writing code myself, document.getElementById, right? That is the most dependable, reliable way. I know I have an element with an ID, and I know if I type in add list in here, that's going to give me that element. It's easy to read, it's easy to understand. But I wanted to also show that when you're in an event handler, event.target is always going to equal the event, whatever it was, the element that caused that event to fire. And the submit event specifically is the form. And the form knows what inputs are inside of it. Just wanted to show a different way to get there. Does that make sense? Go ahead, Creed.
Yeah, so if I wanted to add time to my list, I would create another list item with time, correct?
What do you want to put the time in for? What do you mean?
For when I added
when you added the element in the first place?
Yeah, when I added the element. So I would do event.time dot value, right?
There's two ways, right? The first way would be in your list item, you can actually add an input. Input ID equals time, whatever, plus I. Type equals text. Name equals time. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to create that. Right? Let's create a list. Did I broke something? 1.7. Where did we make a mistake here? Probably some up here. Let's see. Let's fix whatever we did. Now let's just change this to document. Oh, add list dot value. Oh, value. Forgot to do the dot value. Console. SDF. Cannot read properties of undefined. Reading target at anonymous. This is broken now. Oh, probably because I added an ID. Add list ID.
Hey, I didn't want to sidetrack you.
No.
We can move on.
No, this is important. I want to be able to show you how you can extend this with new functions, and it's probably more important than what we're doing next. So let's do document dot get element by ID new. What do we call it? Add list ID. Add list ID. Right, this should work hopefully. Hello? So it's kind of working. Oh, I forgot to, I never uncommented my render. There we go. Alright, so this, now I've added a second input, so I could put a time in here. I would do these, like, so that this is one direction, right? Like, so let's put a placeholder here. Placeholder equals, maybe we do hour, minute, and something like that. Okay, so now I've got a little time field in here. I can reference that time field the exact same way, right? So I would, in our add list item, where are we at? Yep. So here, right, where we're getting the element by value, I can get the time list ID dot value, right? So that's the same here. Yep. Time underscore list. So then, what do I want to do with this, right? Time. I would probably want to store this in our list item, time, time. Maybe I'd call this timestamp, right? And so now, if we were to add a list item, Eric, let's say 12. Now our lists item, our list array, has a list in it, and one of those items has a timestamp. One of our items has a timestamp, 12 o'clock. And I can then, when I'm rendering this, when I'm rendering out my to-do list, when I'm generating these pages, we put list title here, that's the H2, then we're putting in the value, right? So I would put in plus, maybe space, plus list dot items j dot time stamp, right? So if I'm in here, Eric 12, right? Now I put the time code in here. Now what I would probably do when I'm thinking about time though, I probably would not go the route of having the user for this type of thing provide their own time. And that's because JavaScript already has time information for us. So maybe what I would do is use the date object that is already here, so that when I'm doing this, right, I don't need to capture the time this way. What I can do is use new date dot get hours plus colon plus new date dot get minutes. Right, so that's going to create that same kind of time string, and it's going to do that. And we'll put in Eric, right? 1727. So 1727 is military time. You guys are all familiar with this. If you wanted to make this 12-hour time, right? You could, if it's greater than 12, subtract 12, right? So.
But you can't use the event viewer to automatically add the time, like you populated the. If you go to the event viewer for me.
What event viewer?
On your code.
The event handler? This
event handler, yeah.
Yeah.
The listener, I'm sorry.
That's what I'm doing here on line 36. I'm having the JavaScript automatically add our time.
Okay. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, and then all I have to do is store that in the item, in the actual list item itself. Or I could have done, new date in here, and I don't even need to create a variable. But now when I render this, Eric, all right, it's going to have the full time string, so we probably want to do something different about that. Right, so down here when we're rendering it, instead of just putting in the timestamp, we probably want to do timestamp dot get hours plus, right, list dot items j dot timestamp, because now timestamp is a date object. So get minutes. That's going to do the same thing. 1729. Lots of different ways to approach solving this, and it's going to depend on what it is you're trying to do. Sometimes your requirements will say, by default, put in like the current time, but also let the user change the time. Or maybe what we do is every time something changes, right? If I mark this as complete, maybe that timestamp should change as well. So I would do that in here, right? Because we already have this. Where do we do this? It's on our click, right? So myl.class. Yeah, so we're saying .completed equals true, right? I can also say update the timestamp .timestamp equals new date. Right, so every time we make a change, either to delete, well, deleting won't matter because we're splicing it out of there. But if I was to mark this as true or not, right, you can see 1730. How long is 1730 going to last? Oof. Come on. How many seconds do we have left to go? Oh man, like 30 seconds. We got like 40 seconds here. But when this becomes 1731, if I was to click, hey, this is done, now I'm going to update that timestamp variable that was stored in our object, so that you would see this time be reflected behind the scenes. So every time you update it, we're storing a new date in here, and that's a pretty common pattern for this type of application, where you just want to see, like, what was the last time this was updated? When it's first created, that's the first timestamp you catch, and then when it's updated, that's the second timestamp you catch. So that's a pretty common pattern, right? So now that we're at 5:30:56, let's add a new item at 17:30, new item 2, right? Yeah, so now we're at 17:31. If I click on this one, this should update. Oh, it didn't update because we don't recall render list in here, which we could. Let's do yeah. So we could just do render to-do list right in here. So that will call the thing that updates this information. So that if the time had changed, and I click on this link, right, it would update the entire page and change the timestamp. Right? So this render function is really the heavy hitter here. This is our big lift. Right? We've got a data object that has completed or not completed. It has the value that we put in our lists. We can call this wherever we want, and it will re-render everything on our page. Right? So as soon as we get to 5:32, that should be right about now. Yeah, 17:32. You should see this one be marked strike through, and you should see this number go 17:32. Perfect. Cool. We built a framework that lets us continue to add new features to it. Any feature we can think of, because we built it to be like a system. Right? That's all of programming. We're trying to find ways to build, 40 lines of code that can create, Facebook. All right. Good questions. Any other questions about the to-do list app or anything we've done today? No? All right, we're going to change gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about regular expressions. Regular expressions. So when you think of regular expressions, I want you to think of a pattern. A regular expression is a pattern for searching inside of text. We're going to use this in JavaScript occasionally when we need to use JavaScript to search for things. But we are going to use this definitely on the back end sometimes, and we're definitely going to use it in some of our HTML inputs to validate that we've got correct information. Regular expressions are extremely powerful. I've worked in entire jobs where my entire career was to write really complicated regular expressions. This is a whole different type of language. It's a whole different wild and crazy syntax that we're going to learn today. But it's really powerful. I just want to introduce this to you and show you kind of how to use it so that when this comes up in the future, you can say, oh, I know that I need to search for a pattern inside of a string. I'm going to try and figure out a regular expression for this. So let's introduce what are regular expressions. In JavaScript, a regular expression is an object that is built in natively called regexp, right? Regexp. Sometimes you'll see this referred to in other programming languages as regex, like this. Some languages will spell it out as regular expression. There's also a shorthand, right? So when I say new regular expression, you'll see that it returned to us a forward slash followed by some words and then a closing slash. This is the regular expression literal syntax. So just like with JavaScript where we say, hey, we can make an array by calling new array, or we can make an array by saying, right, that's the array literal syntax. We're saying, just give me an array. I don't need to create a new class. In JavaScript, as well as in many other programming languages, we can type in a regular expression just like this, and that is a valid regular expression. So it's kind of like a string. A string would be Eric with quotes or Eric with double quotes. A regular expression starts with a forward slash and ends with a forward slash, kind of. Right? So this is the format of a regular expression. Now, what is a regular expression used for? We use it for searching inside of strings, and we can do this a couple of different ways. The first way we're going to show off is the .exec function, right? So regular expression, as we saw from up here, it's an object. There is a .execute, exec, E-X-E-C, that when I pass it a string, my name is Eric, Harrison, right? It will search inside this string and find the spot where the word Eric appears for the first time. So it's saying it did find Eric. It found it at index 11, right? So if you counted the letters 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, it found it in here. Okay, that is the .exec function. Now, if we did .exec on a regular expression that did not contain the word Eric, it's going to return null to us. Otherwise, it will return an array of matches. Right? It's going to, so if we did var matches equals Eric.exec, my name is Eric. Right? Matches, right? Matches 0 is going to be the word that we found, and then matches index is going to tell you where did that start in the string. So we could use this in combination with one of our string replace methods, or one of these other things where we're slicing starting at what was it? My name is Eric dot slice, right? 11 4 11. I forget how to use slice. I have to look it up. But we can use it with those existing functions that we were playing with. We'd have to go look at W3 Schools to find out the syntax, but we can use the index that's returned here to help us do things with this string. So that's the .exec function, right? Eric.exec. And I could have just as easily, right, just because we said we're writing it like this in the literal syntax, I can also store this to a variable. So I can say my name regex equals /Eric. And if we look at my name regex, right, it is Eric. And I can call the .exec function on that. My name is Eric, right? So what you could do with this is that we could split. Remember when we were talking about paragraphs of text? What if you wanted to find on line by line where the word Eric appeared? You can store the regular expression Eric, the pattern of my name, loop through every line by calling string.split. Let's make a large paragraph. Var paragraphs equals, let's make this an array. Right? And we'll say this is the first sentence. This is the second sentence. My name is Eric. Fourth sentence, right? So we can have a paragraph here inside of an array, and what we would do is for var I equals 0, I is less than paragraphs dot length I plus plus. And then we can simply say my name regex dot test dot exec, and we'll say paragraphs I. Right, so paragraphs I is going to be each sentence individually as we go, and we'll just put this as matches. Right, we'll say var matches equals. And then we can inside of our loop say if matches. Right, so if that's not null, console.log matches. Okay. So it did find, in the third sentence that's the match that came out of it. Regular expressions are a completely separate language for letting us define the pattern that we want to search for in our text. So I used a real simple one, right? A single word like this, right, inside of a regular expression. There are a whole bunch of special characters that we can use to define more complicated patterns. So, right, the first one we want to take a look at is if I have my regular expression that looks like this, and I want it to match my name is Eric, right? That's going to be basically a false match because regular expressions are case sensitive by default. Case sensitive by default. But there is a cool thing, these are called flags, in that the pattern that we're searching for goes between these two slashes. But directly after the slash goes flags. So if I put in the I flag, just the letter I, it's going to make it a case insensitive search. So now it will find any spelling of Eric, right? It will find any of those because we made it case insensitive. Okay? Any questions there? Go ahead.
So I is just to check it no matter what the capitalization
Correct.
situation is.
It says this entire pattern is case insensitive.
And that's the only thing I does in this situation.
Yes.
Okay.
Good question. All right. So what if I wanted to find any word that started with an E, right? This, if I do just /E like this, it's going to find the letter E that shows up in my name is, it finds the E here, right? This first E. I don't know if .exec will work with the G flag. Let's test. No, it doesn't look like it. We'll talk about the G flag in a minute. All right, so let's do ER, right? So we wanted to find ERIC. We want to find my name, but we only have the first two letters of my name. So what I can do here is I can say plus, right? And now we'll can wrap it in. Right? Gosh, we can wrap it in +1. Shouldn't have picked an example like this. Let's see. Oh, I got an idea. We'll do dot maybe. Yeah, perfect. So dot is going to match any other character. So if we knew we wanted it to be 4 letters long, but we don't know what those 4 letters are going to be, right? We can have it match ERIC. And if I put this, let's see if we do it without parentheses, if this will work. Right? Yeah, perfect. So you could do ER dot dot, and it's going to find every instance. So ER is going to match whatever starts with the ER, and then dot dot says any other letter, any other character. Okay. Any questions there? Dot dot is a special character that says match anything, right? And if I had put my name is ER9C, right? It's going to match ER9C because the dot matches anything. What we can also do is we can do dot plus, which is going to say, hey, match anything and more, right? So ER9C fun, right? It's going to match everything on down the line. So dot plus is going to match, dot matches an extra, any character, any number, any letter, right? We could put in ER91 exclamation point. It's going to match that as well. Dot is very greedy. It says any character that comes next. And then the plus sign says keep matching till the end. Okay? Now, what if I had, my name is ER9, I like potatoes. Okay, so that's my string. You'll notice that this continues to match ER9, whatever, fun, I like potatoes. But what if I just wanted to match the word up until the period, right? We know that the period here counts as a match whatever character, right? If I want to explicitly match on the period, I can use the escape character, which is a backslash, and I can say, match ER any number of characters up until a period, right? And I can even change this to be, let's just ER whatever 9 until we get to the word fun, right? So I can say fun. So this will be any number of characters ending with FUN. So it's going to capture fun, and then the last fun says that's where the pattern stops. Right? It says ER, yep, that's correct. 9-1, that's all falling under this. Fun, that all falls under this as well. And then it finally goes up to fun, the final fun, which is here. So that's where our pattern has stopped. Let's put this in a real-world example. Where would you use regular expressions normally? Let's say I wanted to capture phone numbers. Okay, there is a special command /d .exec, and if we put in 219.99.5774, right, it's going to match that first 2. So we can use the plus character to say, give me any number of characters that match. So it's going to match that first digit and then go all the way to the end. But it runs into a dash. Well, we know the phone number format, right? The phone number format is some number of digits for an area code, a dash, some number of digits for an area for the local code, a dash, some number of digits. And so now we can extract a phone number out of any string that we want. This will find our phone number in the middle. Because the pattern is /d, which means any digit, followed by a dash, any digit, followed by a dash, any digit, followed by a dash. And because we put the plus symbol right after whatever goes before it, that says more than 1. So this pattern, regular expressions, very powerfully lets us search through large bodies of text and extract out any matches that meet some criteria. You know, kind of this is kind of a silly example, right? But what does an email look like, right? It can be, you know, any word character followed by an @ sign, followed by any word character, and then you know, maybe like dot, an actual dot, and then you know, any word. And so then we can do exec something me @ erichharrison.info something. Right? Maybe this should maybe work. What would we do? Let's do. Is the word character like the capital W? Let's see. Maybe that's that. Maybe the @ sign is special character we need to escape. Maybe we start it this way. So this is kind of one of the challenges of regular expressions in general, is that we can find the regular expression. So let's say word. So let's say non-digit plus anyway. Writing regular expression on the fly is a pain in the butt. But this lets us define a pattern using flags, special symbols, and things like that, so we can write a very tight, condensed regular expression and then test any number of strings against that to see if it matches. Okay? You know, let's look up a regular expression for email addresses. All right, and we can just literally copy in a there we go. So this is a regular expression that somebody has written that matches the valid email address format. So if we paste this into our code here, right? So let's just say var email regular expression equals / okay, perfect. So now I can say email regular expression dot exec something me @ erichharrison.info something, right? And it finds that email address out of that list. Now, I don't expect you ever to be able to write this kind of regular expression. This is kind of wild. And if you wanted to, you could sit there and try to figure out how this works, right? It's checking for all the various, like some of these codes in here. Like, what are all these crazy codes? Well, there are valid email addresses that have Chinese and Unicode characters. So you have to be able to match on those as well. We could probably make it very simplistic, right? Here's the @ sign in the middle. Go ahead. Yeah, emailregex.com. Yeah.
That shows like many different languages version of it.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of really great resources like this. And if you wanted to understand what each thing was doing from like a step-by-step type of method, right, you could work your way down the rules here in a way that is really interesting. There's nothing magical going on here. It's just a pattern. And it's a language of defining a pattern so that letters in a string match that existing pattern. All right. We've been kind of taking a look at the exec function that is on a regular expression object, right? So when we write this, you know, pattern.exec, we're saying the regular expression itself .exec. There's another one, right? If you just want to see if something contains it or not, right? Let's use our email regular expression .exec, and we'll just put in a string like eric@harrison.co, right? That's a valid email address. If I put in no @ sign, that's not a valid email address, so it returns null. There is, if we wanted to see just a true or false on this, there is also an email regular expression .test, and we put in a string, and we can say eric@harrison.co. This will return true, and if it's an invalid email address, it will return false. .test is just saying yes or no. It's not showing you where the match was. It's not doing any of that stuff. .test, yes or no. .exec will give you an array of matches and some more information. The cool thing about regular expressions in this way, right, if we look at email regular expression, it's a way that we can write our pattern, store it into a variable, and then use this variable over and over and over again. Okay. We can also test this from the context of the string. So these are the 3 string-specific methods. So string.match, string.search, and string.replace. Let's take a look at all three of these. The first is string, right? So if we did eric@harrison.co.match, email regular expression, right? It's going to return the same type of match object that regular expression.execute returned. But it's doing it from the context of the string. This is a property, this is a method of a string variable, string.match. It also will return null if it does not match, just like exec does. So if you have a string and you want to compare it to a regular expression, you can do string.match. If you have a regular expression and you want to compare it to a string, you would do regular expression.exec. Okay? The next one is string.search, email regular expression. That's going to show a 0, right? It's going to show you the first instance that it found a match. So if our string was, something space, right? Now it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10. Gives us 10. Because that's the index in the string where that regular expression was first found. .search. It's going to return. Be aware that just like with index of or some of those other functions, right? If the string matches at 0, right? If the string starts at 0, if the regular expression matches at index 0, that's going to return a 0. So if I was simply testing if eric@harrison.co.search email regular expression, right? This will never fire, right? Because that was true at line 0. So we would have to do the same thing we do with the other one and say equals does not equal null, right? Let's put some words in here. Let's do console.log found. Okay. So now that found will actually run because it found a result of 0. The string starts at 0. That's .search. That's the search method of a string. You can also with .search, right? So we could do eric.search, and you could just put a string in here. And I could say, does the word Eric exist in here? It doesn't have to be a regular expression, or if it does, it doesn't even have to be a complicated pattern. Like I can say RI. Right? That's going to tell us it's found at 1. We could do the same thing with a regular string. RI. Right? It's going to tell us the same answer. The reason we would want to use a regular expression here is because this is going to be case sensitive. If we just compare it to a string, that's case sensitive. If I wanted to do this case insensitive, ERIC dot search RI, that's going to be -1. If I do dot search RII, case insensitive, it does indeed find that at 1. So if you're ever needing to make something case sensitive as a search, you can just pretty easily convert whatever substring you're looking for and turn it into a regular expression by using the // and then put an I in there. Any questions? I know this is a lot. Okay. And then the final thing, string.replace. Right? So let's do eric.replace. And replace takes two things, right? If I want to change Eric, the search value, Eric case insensitive, with Meg. That's going to replace any instance of this pattern matching in here with the word Meg. Right? So let's put in Eric. Maybe this will show off something cool, hopefully. So it replaced the first instance. Now let's see if the global thing will actually work. Yeah, perfect. So the global flag is like the case insensitive flag, but what the global flag says is anywhere in this string that you find this pattern, do this replacement. And that global flag is a G, right? You can do a G by itself, and that won't replace anything because Eric is not the same as uppercase Eric, right? Let's make this Eric, Isla, right? So those two middle Erics were replaced with Meg. If I take out the G, it's just going to replace that first one. If I make this case insensitive, it's going to replace all 4 of those Erics with Meg. Oh, if I pressed G. Meg, Isla. This is an extremely powerful tool. This is like built-in find and replace if you're building a text editor or something like that, and you want to change, every instance of the name Eric with, now his name is something cool like James Bond. Oh, wait, I want to make Eric be James Bond. Right. Now I'm like some kind of superhero, super spy for MI6, right? That's dot replace. So replace, search, and match are functions of the string itself. Exec and test are methods of the regular expression. They both work very similarly. It just depends on what is the argument that we're passing to that function. All the string-specific functions take a regular expression as their argument. All of the regular expression ones take the string as their argument, the thing to actually search in. And if we were to even just start typing this, right, .exec, and then we, right, our little context popper-upper says, hey, this function expects to get a string. Right, so whatever at whatever.com. Cool. It will find any email address. Let's take a look at some other cool patterns real quickly. So we talked about the flag I. What does flag I do?
Sorry, are you asking? Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. It's just case insensitive.
Mm-hmm. And Karif, what does the G flag do?
That's global.
Perfect. And then we have some special characters that we saw that the backslash, if we wanted to actually look at a period, right? Period means something. Period means something. If we wanted to find the actual period, we would have to escape it with a backslash. Okay? The dot, it matches any character. The asterisk, we didn't take a look at the asterisk, but this matches, let's see if we can show this off. Let's see, Eric, let's do E asterisk dot test Eric, right? E asterisk is like plus, it's going to do any number, right? Now maybe let's show off exec, maybe. Right. Dot asterisk is going to match any number of letters. The plus matches one or more, right? So it's going to look at similar types of things. Let's see. If we put a, how can we show this off? Eric Erickson. Right. Let's put in Harrison. I'd have to invent a string to match this. But anyway, plus and asterisk are very similar in that they're matching whatever the previous character was, whatever the previous thing was, match that thing. So by default, when we're putting in even just words in here, when I'm putting in Eric, what I'm really saying is I'm matching the special key of E, R, I, and C. Right? I can do A, E, I, O, U, right? To say, hey, show me any vowel. And I'm putting it in brackets. I'm saying, just give me any number of vowels, right? So if I do, here's what we can do. I can do dot star plus. Which is fun.
Try G.
Yeah. G doesn't work with exec for some reason. Let's put an R in here as well. Plus. There we go. So these are the actual characters that we're searching for in this type of, the square brackets say, hey, turn this into a little pattern. And then we say, hey, show me multiple of these, right? So it's saying E, I, and R show up in this list, right? So it's getting all of those. If I was to put an asterisk here at the end, it's doing the same thing. Right, so any of the things that are inside this pattern of letters to look at will show up here. We can also do ranges, right? We can do E to E to let's do C to I. Right. Cool. A to I. Gosh. What kind of pattern would show this off? I don't know. We'll look at there's a cool tool that will help walk us through this. The dollar sign matches the end of the string, and the uppercase arrow that's like shift 6 is at the start of the string, right? So if we wanted to specifically look for things that, let's say, start of the string Eric dot test, Eric was here, is true, okay? But if I put in ASDF, Eric was here, that is false, because this says, hey, start looking at the start of the string. Same as if I was to do here dollar sign dot test, ASDF Eric was here, right? That will be true. But if I put period at the end, now it is false, because the end of the string is not just HERE. So if you ever need to see, is the beginning of this sentence this? Is the end of the sentence this? You can use dollar sign or the caret symbol, which is a shift 6. Those are some of the meta characters that we can use to search through things, right? Character sets A through Z, right? So we kind of show this. Let's just right. So A through Z, right? Dot test or dot exec Eric. Oh, forgot my closing thing here, right? Is going to match the E. If I put a star, it's going to match the entire thing, right? So it's going to match the first letter that matches this thing. I could do A through Z again. Now it's going to get ER. So whenever we put something in the bracket, it's saying search for that thing in the bracket as a single pattern to find. So what you'll often find is, you know, if we didn't want to put the case insensitive flag in here, we could do, right, ERIC, right? Oh, I don't have it, right? So this pattern, right, the pattern that happens between here, it's going to say, in the first character spot, look for any A through Z, which is true. Then we said, hey, look at any A through Z but uppercase, right? So that only matched when we changed this to a capital R. When I did it with this version, without a capital R, right, it returns null because I don't have a capital R in that position, right? I could put in a third one, right? A through Z. So now it's going to match ERI. Okay. So what you'll often see these used for is when you are, so for example, hexadecimal, right, is 0 through 9, and then A through F, right? So we're talking about like hex color codes, right? We could do 0 through 9, A through F, right? And if we had a string that was, let's do not star, star, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Let's do star, right? That's going to match any number of those occurrences in this string, A, even if you did it as, right, like a small case. And we can put in the hex symbol in here. So if we wanted to find, hey, are there any hexadecimal codes on our page, right? We could do a character set lookup like this, followed by any number of them. Maybe we want to say, you know, plus, right? And maybe we say 6. We'd have to use the number of matches thing, right? Which is, yeah, min. Right, so we'd have to have 6, not star, 6. Yeah, there we go. So if I have a string that has a hexadecimal code like this, where it has 6 letters, right, it finds it. If I had one that's, you know, 2, A, B, C, D, E, right? These are all part of that same pattern, but it's only going to match up to 6 of those characters. Up to 6 of these characters. If we took out our pound here, maybe this is even easier to see, right? So inside a giant string, it's going to match the first instance where it gets 0 through 9, A through F in either case, or I could just make this A through F and make it case insensitive. It's going to do the same thing. So it's a language that we can use to write patterns in to search through text to find things. We showed off, right? So, right, this symbol, curly brackets in here, where you put a number in here, 6. If we wanted to say, hey, I want to match either 3 or 6, let's say I have, right, we know we can do F, right? If I say, hey, I want to match 6 of these, 0F0 is not 6. So what I can do is I can put 3 comma 6, and it's going to match, it matches DFA, which is in here. So let's put the pound sign back in here, right? There you go. So we're saying the pattern is, it starts with a pound sign, then it is either 3 of these, 0 through 9, A through F, or 6 of these, right? So 0, F, F, 0, 0, right? 0, 0 will match. And it ignores all the other ones that may have matched because they don't have a pound sign in front of it. The /W is going to match a word. /W is going to /capital W is going to match a non-word. Same with /D, that matches a digit. \D matches a non-digit, right? So using this exact same, if we wanted to match the letter A, for example, right? If I do /D, it's matching that very first A on index 0. If I do /D, it's going to match the first 0 at index 10. Do you guys see this? If I do /W, it's going to match the letter A, because that's the start of the first word. If I do /W, it should match, I think, our space. Yeah, our space at line 8. So that's like a word boundary. So /W lowercase is a word. /W uppercase is a word boundary. So the spaces between words. If I wanted to replace, for example, let's say I had a sentence like my list input dot replace. I could say replace every non-word with an underscore. And let's make this global. Now I've changed 3 words into something that I could put in an attribute for an ID, right? Or something like that. If I was to build a profile page in here, right? Like create new list. If I wanted to make this a part of the URL, maybe by default it's create new list dot replace, and I say, hey, just replace every non-word character with a underscore. Create new list. If I wanted to turn them into dashes, I could do it like this. If I wanted to replace them with nothing, just smush them together as words, I could do it like this, where I'm replacing it with an empty string. There's a ton of flexibility and power here with even the simplest of regular expressions, where we're saying, hey, throughout this entire string, anytime you come to this occurrence, take it out. A great example of this, right? Let's say you were writing a blog or something like that, and you wanted to make it so that anytime you found an email address, you redacted it, right? So let's say my name is Eric and my email address is me@ericharrison.info. Please email me today, right? You don't want your users to be able to just come in here and post their email address, so you might say replace email regular expression with email address withheld. Right? And so now that entire string, by passing it through this one function, replace, is taking any email address it ever finds in here and replacing it with this word. A lot of websites will do this with web pages as well, right? You do not want your users to be able to come in and write a comment and say, like, check out my website where you can buy, socks for Christmas, right? You don't want to let people spam on your website. So they'll say, hey, anytime you find a website address, an HTTP, let's find one real quick. Website address regular expression. Yeah, perfect. Yep. So we'll just grab this one. right? So var website regex equals. We'll put that there. Good. So let's say, right, my email address is here. Please email today, and then then they say, please buy my socks at Shopify.com/Eric's store, right? We don't want to have people in here making our website bad and advertising on our page. So maybe we use the website regex thing, and we say URL withheld. And so now any instance of any website address that is in this string is going to be replaced with that string. It's extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. You can also use this for search engines, right? So if I was to get, let's see if we can find where do we have our email regular expression. Oh, regular expression. Oh, come on. Oh, I'm trying to define it. Email regular expression. Okay, this is the one. We're going to copy this, and we'll take this with us. Let's see. What's a website? Oh, my website has some stuff here. All right, I got an email address on here. ericharrison.info. All right, I know my email address in here somewhere. Right, we could write a web spider that says document.body.toString. Let's do document.body .inner HTML. That's the entire HTML page, right? You can see a couple email addresses in here, right? So what if I wanted to .find? Oh, I got to create my regular expression thing. Var email re equals paste, right? And let's make this global, right? So now I can take this document.body.inner.html .match all. I'm going to use match, and I'm going to paste in email read, right? So now I found 16 email addresses on this page, including, gosh, there's one in here from i500-2xpng. I don't know where that came from. Oh, there must be a .png top-level domain or something. So this is a picture that is on the page. But I've just now stripped out, at least 14 really good email addresses from this page, and I can do this on any page on the internet. If I wanted to get all the links on this page, right? Where was that link one we had? Right? Let's find all of the links. Var URL re equals paste, and then we put our / up here. I do the same thing. URL re. These are all 3 of the links on this page. I got one link to Amazon. I got some www thing here. And then I got, so that this regular expression seems to be a little bit broken because it's not finding all of the different links. So I've got a couple in here. And it's not, probably because they got hashtags in it. But we can write a pattern and reuse it on big strings over and over and over again. This is extremely powerful. Any questions? Go ahead, Kareef.
If you go back to when you found the emails on your web page, right? Mm-hmm. And you placed .g, which meant that you were going to find the global, all the emails on the page, correct?
Yep.
Then why when you did your document .match all, why did you have to do that? Why couldn't you just use URL re? Since it was searching globally.
It's doing the same thing. Match all is going to find all occurrences. Call it the non-global regex augment. I don't use this one very often. Let's try it. Var. Let's pass in URL re in here. Non-global regex augment. I don't know what match all does, to be honest. We'd have to look this up on W3 Schools.
Oh, I thought I saw you type match all.
No, I guess match.
Oh, got it. Okay, that was me.
Match all. I don't know, just string.match all. look like it shows up in here, but for some reason it's showing up in dot match all called with string dot match all. Let's see, match all. Yeah, it's not even a thing. New string dot match all. I don't know what it's expecting here as value. It says global regex iterator, right? So I'll put in letter A. String.prototype match all called with the non-global regex argument. I mean, we could look up this thing. Match all throws an error. Oh, match all only works if you include a regular expression that has the G flag on it. And it's giving us a regular expression string iterator. I don't know what that means. Oh, because there's nothing in that string. Let's try it again. Right. So match all. If I call this here, right, it's returning some kind of regular expression string iterator. I don't know what this does. Oh, it's got a dot next function. Yeah. So it will let you loop through it, right? So while document dot body dot inner. All right. Let's just actually collect this. So while cool, and then while we'd have to use it with iterators. So there's a dot next function that is returned in this object. So let's do var iterator equals. Let's copy this thing. Maybe I can show this off real quickly. So I do iterator dot next, which is a function. It's going to return the first URL that it finds, right? Amazon, whatever. Then I can call iterator.next again, and it's going to call, then it finds my GitHub address. Then I call it again. Now it finds my Amazon book link again, and I call it again. So match all is intended to be used in loops, right? So while iterator.next, something like that, console.log. We'll cover that maybe in the ES6 zone. I don't use iterators very often because I find them clunkier than just giving me an array of matches and looping through it. But some people like to write code that way. Anyway, any questions about regular expressions? Generally, I'm either going to use a very simple regular expression, or I'm going to do what you saw me do like 3 times in this thing, which is regular expression to find a zip code, right? Something like that. Validate US zip codes, right? So they'll give you this kind of regular expression. You literally just copy it into your code. Some smart person somewhere else has already found the patterns that match the valid zip code formats, right? So it can be, we know that zip codes have 5 digits, but then they can also have a dash and 4 digits sometimes. You want to capture all of those, right? So this regular expression will have all of the, right? So you started as the beginning of the string, 0 through 9 only, will have exactly 5. And then sometimes it will have a dash, and then 0 through 9, and then 4 matches, all the way to the end of the string. So this would match if it was a valid zip code. We'll also sometimes use this for like validating credit cards, like credit card validator. Credit card validator, regular expression. Right? It's just a pattern language, right? So they're even showing you here, Visa's format has a different regular expression than MasterCard, has a different one than American Express. So here's a regular expression that says, does it match any of those, all put together? It is okay to use the internet as a resource to find a pre-built pattern that covers all these edge cases. It has been probably 15 years since I was working in that job where we did regular expressions all the time, where I could write these myself from start to finish. And even then, you got to write it, and this language is so compressed and so kind of wild that you have to test it each and every time just to make sure that you're actually matching on the things you're expected to match on. And then the other thing to be aware of is that the JavaScript regular expression engine is different than the Perl regular expression engine, different than the PHP regular expression engine. They're going to look similar, but how they find and capture matches is going to be slightly different from language to language. They're all almost always going to start with, a regular expression always starts with pattern inside of these things, and then flags go at the end. Some languages do other things, like Perl, for example, will have like an M up front to say, hey, this is a match, where I'm just trying to see yes or no. So these languages can implement some or more or all of this type of language. So just be aware that a regular expression is a pattern for searching text, and that you can search Google and start to recognize that pattern and use it in the places where you need to compare a pattern against text, or a text against or strings against a pattern. Any question? All right. It is 6:21. Let's take a break. Our brains are probably mush at this point. Let's come back at 6:35. Okay? Come back. The reason we dove in and we covered a kind of a more complicated form of string manipulation, pattern matching of regular expressions now is because we're going to talk about it in the context of being a real web developer. As a senior software engineer, as someone who's been here for 10, 15 years, you might eventually land in a job where you have to use really complex regular expressions to build, an application to search through the human genome to look for specific strands of DNA. That might be one type of use for a complicated regular expression, where you're looking for a pattern of, this 1,000-character long pattern means that you have blue eyes versus green eyes, right? That's the kind of thing you might eventually have to do as a more seasoned software developer. But generally, as a junior web developer, we need to know just the bare minimum so that we can start doing input validation to make sure that our users are putting in valid inputs so that it doesn't break our code, or so that the code will continue to function. A great example kind of is the phone number field, or a credit card field, or if you're saying, hey, this is your zip code field, well, we don't want to take 4 numbers. 4 numbers is invalid. 5 numbers is the correct number, right? And so traditionally, we would do this purely in JavaScript. We would check the input values when they did on submit, and we would say, hey, if this pattern is here, good. If not, change it to red, prevent the form from submitting, and return them to the form, make them fix it. Right? I'm sure you guys have seen this a bunch of times where you put in the wrong type of phone number and it will make the box red and it'll say this is an invalid phone number. So we're going to show both paths right now. One of the cool things is that HTML5, modern HTML development, has added a whole bunch of this stuff into HTML itself so that you can make your forms themselves much cleaner without even needing JavaScript. But we're going to take a look at both approaches because I think it will also let us practice some of the JavaScript stuff we were learning yesterday. So I'm going to start a brand new project here. Let's see. New window. All right. Let's just minimize you all together. I will update you later. I'm going to open a folder. CBC13. Let's make folder form validation. Okay. So here we are in a new project. I am going to create a JavaScript folder. I'm not going to make a CSS folder. I'm just going to do this all in HTML. Then I'm going to say index.html. I'm going to create my boilerplate. And I'm going to say input validation. Okay. And inside of here, we're going to load a script. Source equals JS. We'll call this validate.js. And we'll put defer on here. Script. And then I'm going to make style. I'm just going to give ourselves a quick style so the page doesn't look so terrible. So we'll say body, font, family. Yep, good enough. Pick some nice, pleasant sans serif font. We'll give it a nice background color. We won't spend too much time here making this look pretty. Background color, medium turquoise. Looks good. All right. So I'm going to make some form elements. My form elements. Right? And so traditionally what we would do is we'd say form, okay, and then we would put in our inputs, right? So we'd say label for equals username, right? Like you can kind of imagine this as like a create account form, right? So we're gonna capture username. Maybe we're gonna capture password in here. Let's do input. Input type equals text. Name equals username. It equals. Okay, and then we'll do autocomplete is off because we don't want to autocomplete all of our things. And then we'll say br. Okay. We'll just copy this a couple of times so that we don't have to recreate the wheel every time. So we'll just say password. Right. Password. Password. And we'll make this password. 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 And then we'll say verify password. We'll make them put it in twice. Verify password. And we'll say this is for verify password. And will be verify password. Verify password. Good. Make this a password field too. And then we want to make sure maybe this only works for people who live in the United States. So we put in country. Country. Right. Country. And we make this, size equals 10. We want to show that this is smaller. And maybe what we even do is like, US. Right, we want to use like the two-letter code here. Go ahead.
For label 4, your country's capitalized and the other ones aren't. Is that important?
It won't break anything, but it will make people who are using visually impaired browsers or somebody like that might cause some complications. This label 4 is really just a nicety. It lets browsers that are for people who can't see that are visually impaired. Maybe it's like it reads the web page to them. This label will say, hey, there is an input here, and it is country bracket US. If we have this mismatch like this, it doesn't break anything. Nothing will stop functioning for us on our web page, but it might for someone visually impaired. And then we'll put in our last one will be zip code. And so we'll do zip code. Just copy this whole thing. Zip code. I'll just put zip. 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 Alright, zip. Cool. And we'll make this, 5 plus a dash plus 4, so it can be 10 long as well, right? That's fine. We'll just make this 15 so it looks a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to load this with our live server, so we should see this pop up. Good. Okay, the page kind of looks bad. Let's make it look pretty. Let's make it look a little prettier, and we'll say label display inline block, and we'll say width 250 px, and we'll say text line right. Okay, so now our page, okay, probably needs extra. Let's just and we'll say margin top npx. All right, so we'll just add a little bit of spacing between these. Yeah, perfect. All right, so here I am. I'm on my inputs, right? If I type in, Eric, ERH, my password is ASDF. I put in US in here, 30824, right? This would be like a valid form for us. We need a submit button. And we'll just put in input, type equals submit, value equals create account, style equals margin top npx. Okay, cool. All right, so now we have a submit button here. I don't want to ever, no, stop. All right, so this is kind of a pretty common type of form setup, right? Traditionally, like for the first 15 years I was a software developer, the only way to like really validate our form inputs was in two places, right? Like I don't want to be able to, let's make this, let's put a form action equals slash method equals, we're going to make this get so we can see our query parameters, right? If I put ERH in here and I click create account, you're going to see that I'm actually submitting to the page, username equals ERH, password is blank, verify password is blank, country equals whatever, zip equals whatever. Traditionally, for like the first 15 years, the only way to validate our input was in two places. I can either do it in JavaScript on the front end, which I would do most of the time, And I would also then have to validate it on the back end to make sure that the user was actually submitting correct information. You are still 100% of the time, as software engineers, going to have to validate the input on the back end. 100% of the time. Because just because we are going to write some code that says, hey, if the username isn't provided, don't let them submit this form, does not mean that they can't use a third party or turn off JavaScript or submit information using a program called Postman to send those variables in anyway. You always, always, always want to validate your information on the back end when we learn back-end programming. But what we would do is we would make nice JavaScript input checking on the front end so that they don't even submit the form, and we can give them some information about like what they need and why. Right? So I might, oh gosh, I pulled up the wrong editor. Let's make this page smaller for us because we don't need to see all of it all the time. Good. So I would open up JavaScript and we'll make it validate.js. Right? That's what we called it, validate.js. And if we make this a little smaller, perfect. Okay. So the traditional way that we would validate this code is we would come in here and we would say document.get element by ID, and we're gonna have to add an ID to this form. Let's do that now. Form. Let's do ID equals create account. Right? So we would write code that would say create account dot add event listener submit function ev. Right? So all of our input validation would go inside this big function. We would say input validation here. Okay? So the very first thing we would do, we would write this type of code 400 times. I could do this in my sleep at this point because I've probably written this type of validation code 40 million times over my entire career. Okay? And so what I would do is that I would come in here and first grab a reference to all of my elements. So I would say var username equals document.get element by ID username, right? Over all of our, we had username, password, verify, country, zip. And so maybe I'll put this in here as a comment so I don't have to keep flopping back and forth. Username, password, verify, password, country, zip. Okay? Then I would do var, actually I'm gonna give myself username el equals that, password el equals document.get element by ID. Password, same thing with verify. Verify, and that was verify underscore password. Good. Now I do var country l equals document get element by ID country. Var zip l equals document get element by ID zip. Right. So I'm getting a reference to all of those elements because I'm going to want to do something with them as we go and validate. So we would write code that would say username must be provided. Can't be more than 12 characters long. Right? Maybe our database only lets us store 12 character usernames for whatever reason. Right? Then we would say it can't start with a number. Right? We can't have one ERH. It has to be ERH. I can put one at the end, but that's like our rule for usernames. Then we would say password el must have a lowercase. Password must have uppercase. Password must have, what else? Let's just start. Let's go there. Password must be at least 8 characters long. And then passwords must match. Then we'll say country must be 2 characters long, right? We'll only accept US, we'll only accept AU, we'll only accept UK, and then zip maybe 5 or 5-4, right? Numbers only. Okay, so we would set up these kind of rules. This is like the requirements of this form. Maybe behind the scenes our database has very rigid, like, hey, this must be this. Maybe we use this zip code. This has to match a valid US zip code. And then maybe we even say like country must be US, right? We don't accept Canadians. We don't accept their zip code. So if it's anything but US, we'll maybe show some kind of warning that says, hey, you can't submit this thing. So we would write in here, so we're still inside the onSubmit. So any of our things that cause this to fail is going to e.prevent default and display some error message, right? So we would come in here and we would say, knowing that this is what we're trying to do, maybe we would come in here and we'd make a var error message equals empty string. Okay. Then we would say, all right, var username val equals username el dot value. Okay, so we're going to get the value of this specific username element, right? The dot value. So if I type in ERH, that username val is going to have ERH in here. Then we would do all of our checks. We would say if username val dot length. Let's just make this username. That'll make me happier, right? From a typing perspective, username. All right. If username dot length is greater than 12, okay, that's going to cause an error. E dot prevent. Right? Maybe we'll say error message equals error message. Oh, let's make this an array. Right? We can have multiple error messages. Maybe that's one of our requirements. So we'll say error message dot push. Right? Your username cannot be more than 12 characters. Right? Okay. Then we'll say if username. Right. So this would be where we would use regular expressions. So I would say if the start of this sentence is a digit dot test username. Right. So if we start our username with a digit, I would say error message dot push. Your username cannot start with a number. Okay. Then we would write if username dot length equals 0, right? So if they didn't provide a username at all, error message dot push, you must provide a username. So we would go down our thing like this, and we would, for each one of these possible conditions, we would create an error message like this, and then we would get down to the very end, and if there are no errors, submit, right? That's fine. But if error messages dot length is greater than 0, e dot prevent default. I hate autocomplete so very much. E dot prevent default. Right, and then we'll do document dot get. Let's loop through this. So let's say let's create ourselves an error message area. All right, so we'll say div id equals errors div, and maybe we'll by default say style display none. Oh, I got a better idea. Let's just check this out. We're gonna make a regular div, and we're gonna create a unordered list in here. Unordered list id equals errors unordered list. So it's gonna be an empty unordered list in here. Then we'll loop through. So for var I equals 0, I is less than error messages dot length I plus plus. And then we'll say document dot get element by ID errors dot inner HTML equals, and we'll just copy this again, right? So we're saying equals document dot inner HTML plus li plus error message I plus li. Right? So if there are any errors, we're going to display that warning on our page. And then we need to, right? If there are not any errors, then the form will submit. This will never fire, will never prevent the default, will never stop it. Okay? So if I was to come in here right now and click create account, we pull up our developer tools here, see if we've got a one ERH. Right? We're getting what did I call my event handler? EV. Oh, no wonder. EV. Let's just put nothing in here, right? you must provide a username, right? If I put 1 ERH, your username cannot start with a number. We might even want to say, right, so every time I do this, this username, this error thing would keep going, right? If I put a whole bunch of words in here, it's going to say your username cannot start with a number. So we might want to clear this out here as well. So we'll say document.getElement ID errors.inner HTML equals nothing. Right, so we always clear it out. Right, so if I put 1 ERH, if I put a whole bunch of stuff in here, we always get a thing. So we would do this type of input validation all the time. And maybe what I would even do is make this, maybe I would, instead of just putting in the string here, I would say we actually have an array, right, that has maybe the username as our thing. Right, so now I'm pushing a username, I'm pushing the string of the field that was the problem. Username. String that was the problem. Good. Right, so you can see that now instead of just pushing in a string into this array, I'm pushing in an array that has two values, the element and the thing that was the problem. And so what I will simply do is, while I'm looping through this, error message I1 is the message. I can also say document.getElement by ID what was it? Error message I0. Okay, dot style, dot background, color equals pink. Okay, so now as soon as I make a mistake here, that element is going to be pink. Now I just wrote this as a system so that this is going to check the error messages regardless of where they're at. But I would come through here and I would just, okay, now username is working. I can say, if, let's just do the check password. So we'll say password l.val u does not equal password verify l.value. Right? So if the usernames don't match, then I would simply go error message dot push, and we'll say password. Let's do verify password. So we'll say verified password. Your passwords must match. Right? So now I can make any and all rules that I want in this system, so that if I type 123 and I type ASDF and then right, your usernames cannot start with a number, your passwords must match, and we've made both of those pink to let us know that's what we have to fix. Okay, we would do this kind of code literally all day long, because almost every product we would build on the web is going to be some kind of form where we're capturing user data. We got to verify the input. Then we would, what makes using Node.js so great is that if you do this code in the first place on the front end, then when you go to write your backend validation, you can just copy all these rules, paste them into your backend code, and now you're done. If you're using a different programming language like PHP or Perl or C# or ASP.NET or any of those other types of technologies, you're going to have to use the same logic, but you're going to have to implement those same checks on the back end as well to make sure that nefarious people aren't saying, oh, this has to be a number, this can't contain a semicolon, right? We want to prevent that in both places. We want to do it on the front end to be nice to our user, to tell them what's wrong, but on the back end, we're actually protecting our server. On the back end, we're protecting our databases. Okay? Does everyone kind of understand what we're doing here with, we just made a simple system to verify our form on submit. And if everything is correct here, if I put ERH, we make this ASDF, right? It will submit the form with the correct values. So this type of system, where we just made a simple event listener to watch for the submit here, it verifies all the values to make sure they match whatever requirements our company or our customer has for this. If they're good, if everything is good, the form will submit. Otherwise, we're going to prevent the default. We're going to say don't let it submit, and display the error message, and show us the thing that needs to be fixed. Okay. What if I wanted to, right? So I put in a couple things that are wrong here. ASD. Okay. I've got two things that are wrong. What if I wanted to make it so that when I click create account, it will automatically focus my input on the very first one that was found. How would we write this in JavaScript? Right, we know we can use the, what is it, like document.getElement by ID country. .focus is a function. We could say .focus on it and put our cursor in that element. If we wanted to have it so that the very first field down the list like this, we want it to be focused on there so that the user can just stay on their keyboard. They don't have to move their mouse. What could we do in this loop or by this loop to say, hey, if we found a problem, let's focus on that element so we can be nice to our users? Who's got an idea? Anyone? If I wanted to make it so that when I get to here and I hit enter, right? I want it to move my cursor automatically back up to the username box because that's the first error we found. How can we write this in JavaScript? Being creative. How would we solve this? We have, right, this array is storing our ID of our element. Go ahead, Eric.
I don't exactly remember, but it'd be something like change focus or select focus.
It's just .focus right here.
Oh,
But how would we
okay.
write? We probably need to write like 4 lines of code here, or maybe 2 lines of code that are compressed. 4 lines of code will, while we're doing this error processing, if there is a problem, we'll go to that first line of code, or that first input.
So you'd need an if then, and then you'd have to go like if error, then document.getElement by ID, username .focus.
Yeah, sure. So I think you're on the right track. So what I would probably do is, so if error message.length is greater than 0, we know we've got a problem. We know we've got an error. I would maybe go document.getElement by ID, and then I would say error message 0, right? That's the first error that we found. 0, which is our element, right, in our array. Right? It's either going to be verify password or username or whatever, and then .focus. Right? So if I save this code right now, do not save this. Oh, come on. Right? If I type 123 ERH, right, ASDF, right, and then I come in here and I hit submit. Now you'll see that it automatically focused my input to here. If I take this problem out, ERH, right, and I hit submit, now that's my main focus. That's pretty cool, right? Go ahead, Josh.
Can you explain that so that you have error message and then array 0, 0?
Yeah.
Can you explain that just one more time?
It's a multi-dimensional array. So if we look at error message, let's make this global. Let's say, right, error message equals that. Let's make this a global variable so we can play with it. Var error message. Oh, wait. Oh, my goodness. I am not using this password. I don't care if it was in a data breach. It's fake. It's fake Google. All right. 123 ERH, right, ASDF. Okay, good. Create account. If I go into my console now and I look at error message, it is a multi-dimensional array. It's an array with 2 arrays in it. So if I do error message 0, right, that is the first error message we have. Your username cannot start with a number. That array, that element, error message 0, is an array. We stored another array in there, and it has 2 elements. So 0 is username, and 1 is your username cannot start with a number. If I go to error message 1, right, that is the second error message. And the first element there, error message 10, is verify password. Error message 11 is your passwords must match. Think of it like a spreadsheet where you got rows and columns, right? Like row 0, column 1, row 0, column 2, right? As it can be any number of rows in here because an array can grow infinitely up until we run out of memory. Right? So all we did was we just said, hey, we had a regular one-level array, but inside the array, we're pushing an array. Right? What we're putting in this is an array. So it could have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13. Any number. And so when we say, hey, error message 0, 0 is the first error message we see in this array, and its element that was in there. Right? So error message 0 in this example, error message 0 is our very first problem we found, and 0, 0 is our username. Error message 0, 0. And so when we say document.getElementById, error message 0, 0, right? We're essentially saying document.getElementById, the string username. Does that make sense? Getting comfortable with working with complex data models, whether it's arrays or objects, is going to be crucial, especially as we get more and more complex in our application. Because even in our to-do app that we were playing with earlier, right? Like this is a complex data object where we have an array where each element in that array is an object, and inside of that object is a property, and then another array that has multiple values. Then that is an array of objects. Knowing how to access, right? If this was actually the thing here, knowing how to access each of these elements, right? So lists 0 is referring to this first object in here. Then we're saying dot list title, because the dot is the notation to access properties of an object. So list 0 list title is this is this value, list 1. List 0 list 1 list title is this value. List 1 items 0 is this entire object. And if we do dot value, it is this string item 1. If we do completed, that's either true or false, in this case false. We can chain, and this is what we're doing when we work with the DOM, the document object model. We're saying, hey, there is a document object that contains HTML, that has a body that contains HTML that we're displaying on the screen. So we could do document.body.whatever on down the list. Or we can do a function that just gives us a single one out of that document, document.getElementById, that is going to say, find me the element that has this ID on it and give it back to me. Being able to reference and work with complex data objects is super duper important to being a software engineer, because this is all you're ever going to do. I guarantee you, with the very few exceptions, you will not be working with, except for when you're writing it yourself, you will very rarely be having, simple usernames like this, or simple variables like this. It's almost always, and even when you do, it's almost always going to be a shortcut to some other complex variable, right? You're going to say, hey, in this example, like list title equals lists 0 dot list title, right? Wherever you want to save yourself a whole bunch of typing, you might create a variable like that. Or more likely, you'll be working with it in loops, where you'll say for var I equals 0, I is less than list dot length, I plus plus, right? Var list equals lists 0, or lists I, right? So as we loop through this, I'm going to have this be assigned to list, and then the next time we go through the loop, this will be assigned to list. This is programming from top to bottom, is doing this kind of thing over and over and over again. Any questions? That was a good one. Thank you for asking it. All right, back to here. Right, so this has been how we had traditionally written input validation for forever, right? Luckily at 2014, 2015, everybody for the most part got a new computer with a new browser, either Firefox, Chrome, Safari, or in some cases Microsoft Edge. And so now we all have modern HTML5 that will let us write a lot of this stuff without having to use JavaScript at all. And we kind of looked at this when we were playing with our, when we were learning about HTML inputs, right? So, right, for this first example, if I was to make these ASDF again, right? Like, so you must provide a username. The most simple possible check. Like, does this box have some value in it? Okay? Let's turn off our validate. Let's turn this off, comment it out. Okay? And so we're just going to now look at some of these rules that we can apply inside of our HTML. So the first one is required, right? You guys remember required? If I put required in here, it's going to give us this built-in pop-up that says, you must put something in this box. That is the simplest, like, does this have a value or not? Okay? Required. And it's going to do the same thing, even though I commented out this code, it's preventing the form from submitting if that field doesn't have something in it. So we could do that same thing with each and every one of these. We could say required, right? And on down the list. And if I put something in here, now please fill out this field. Now you'll notice that required is a great example. When we had our JavaScript code, if I had gone in to each of these elements and said if password l.value.length is equals 0, right? Error message dot push password, you must provide a password, right? And then I can do the same thing for if password l.value. Oh, let's just make that one not required, right? Like they got to be the same. So you have to put something in password to make them not the same, right? So when we were doing this, when we clicked submit, everything was checked at once. If I made both of these required now, using just the HTML attribute, as soon as I fill something in here, and I click that, right now that one's going to tell me this needs to fill out this field. There are pros and cons of both. One is you don't have to write all this JavaScript, but the other is like sometimes it's just a little bit nicer. You can imagine if this was a form that had, you know, like a home loan application or something. It goes on for pages and pages, and you got to put in all kinds of references. Maybe you want to even validate this. You want to call these validations on your blur event, right? So that every single time, if I type in ASDF in here, right, if I go to the next input, right, so let's do that one. Document.getElement by ID, username, .add event listener blur function, right? And then in here we'll say if this value does not equal dot length equals 0, right? This dot style dot background color equals pink, and maybe you put in you know, document dot get element by ID errors dot inner HTML equals plus you must provide a username. li. If I was to turn this back on again and do control that, perfect. Validate yes, line 43. What's on line 43? Sheesh. Oh, I have my array ending there. Perfect. All right. So now, if I'm in here and I go to the next element, it's checking automatically before I even submit. It's letting me know, hey, this is wrong. You might still want to build your code in both places, even if you put this HTML in here. If I was to turn off JavaScript now, right, this required attribute in HTML, I turned off JavaScript, is working, but my regular check is not. So sometimes you'll still want to write all this extra code. If the different, like you guys ask often, like, why would you do this, or when would you do that? If me getting users to fill out this form correctly made me $1 million a year, I'm going to write this code 17 different ways to make sure that I can make sure every single person that can do this page can correctly fill it out. If this is a create account page for, like, you know, friends and family to view my pictures or something, like I might just use the HTML required tag. Okay, so pick the tool that is appropriate for the job you're trying to do. Okay, so that's that one. Required will check on the submit to make sure that there is a value provided in there. Okay, what if we wanted to say, hey, maximum number of characters that we put in here. What was it? What did we say? 12, right? So now, if I type in here, it's max length, I think. Max length. Yeah, max length 12. So now, this will only let me type 12 characters. Yeah, I literally cannot type more, with or without JavaScript in here, right? So this is a really nice feature. If you've got a hard constraint on how many characters you'll let be put in here, max length will put that in there. You also have min length, and we could say 3, right? You have to have at least 3 characters, right? If I put in A, and I click create account, it's going to tell you, please lengthen this text to 3 characters or more. You're currently using 1 character. This is built in by default. We don't have to do anything. I still might want to come in here, and maybe if this is an important field for me, I might want to put this on blur to make it pink, because if this is like 40 pages long, like a giant form, the user gets down to the bottom, way down the bottom of the page, right? He scrolled and scrolled and scrolled, and he clicked create account, and it jumps him all the way to the top. I don't know, like if I'm right here typing stuff in, and something's wrong, maybe tell me now. But that's up to you. It's entirely up to you. So min length will give you the minimum number of characters required. Max length will give you the maximum number of characters that are required. Okay? And then maybe most importantly is pattern. Right? And pattern is going to check to make sure that it matches a regular expression that you put in here. Okay? So if I put in A, B, C, D, right? This is going to say it has to be A, B, C, D. If I put in B, C, D, E, right? How do I do this with pattern? Let's see. I don't use this very often. Let's see. Input pattern attribute. Yep. Perfect. Yep. You got to put. Perfect. I have to put it in. We can come in here and say that. Let's do A through D, and it has to be 3 letters long or 8 letters long. I don't know what this will do. Let's test it. Right. Let's do A, B, C. That should be fine. Yep, great. A, B, C, A, B. Let's test this one out. Yeah, so the one thing about using pattern is that it doesn't tell you, please match the required format. It doesn't tell you the format in here. Like the other one when we were saying, hey, it has to be a min length of 3 or max length of 12. When you use pattern, you can use part of the stuff we learned today about JavaScript regular expressions. You can use that same sort of thing, right? So if you wanted to say, hey, the pattern is, well, here's an example. Let's say slash D, then a slash, right? And then slash D, slash D, slash D, slash D. Okay, so this is going to match like a 7-digit, like an old-fashioned 7-digit phone number where it's like 777-1699, right? So if I put in 777-1699, right, that's good. Although, let's do it this way. Let's do D3, and then we'll do slash D4. This should work. Create account. 777-1699. We might actually have to escape this dash. Oh, yeah, see, that worked. But if I was to take out this 9 here, it's going to tell us we're invalid because we didn't have that 4th element here in our number. If I wanted it to be a full 10-digit phone number, I could do slash D dash, slash D3, right? So now it has to be 219-777-1699. That will pass, but 169 will not. Right? If we wanted to make it be a social security number, 324, right? 3, 2, and 4. Right, perfect. So now it would have to be like 323. If I put in 777 99 0000, right? That's an invalid social security number. I have to reload the page. I have JavaScript turned off. That's why. Right? That's a good social security number. We can submit the thing, right? But this one, 9-9-9, would not be a good social security number, right? So we can use the pattern attribute on any input to meet specific criteria so that like we can guarantee that the user is going to submit the correct information. You're going to want to probably provide, if there is a specific pattern, right, like you'd probably want to do this kind of nice feature where you say username and then maybe you put in, right afterwards you do like small, like a number, right, small. Or maybe you put that in as a placeholder, right, placeholder equals 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, right? So you maybe put it in like that so that it shows the user somehow what kind of number you're expecting. Go ahead.
Can you put that inside like the pop-up field? Like, so say you put the incorrect username in, and then the pop-up like, please put in this format.
Let's see. Yeah. Maybe. Let's try. This says title here. All right. So let's see. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Let's see if this will show it. Right. This may or may not work. I very rarely use this for anything real. 1, 1. Okay. Yeah. So if you put it in the title attribute, whatever you put in the title attribute, okay, use this format. Cool. Well, there you go. Today we learned something together new. Whatever you put in the title attribute, it was going to say use the requested format, and then that shows up in here. Use this format. That's pretty neat. I never knew that. Cool. Any questions about that? Max length is useful for preventing, like, oftentimes when we start working with databases, we'll have like a title field. In our database, it'll be 250 characters long. So if I'm letting people put in a title for something, I'm going to put in max length 250, right? So that they can't possibly put in more characters than I'm going to accept. I'm still going to capture it on the back end and say, like, if there's more than 250 characters, chop it off, or silently truncate it, or maybe I'm going to return false so it won't even insert in the first place. But we're going to put all this kind of stuff on the front end so that our user input is correct. The next thing we want to take a look at, right? So we've been looking at this, right? So let's say 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, right? If I was to click create account right now, that's a valid field. I can, using the pseudo selector, input, and then we'll say valid background color light green. Yeah, let's do light green. Okay, so any input that is valid will show up as light green because I'm using the pseudo selector valid. So if I was to make, right, so right now these are invalid because they don't have a value in there. If I go 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, right, it immediately turns green as soon as it matches that pattern, as soon as that pattern is correct. And as soon as I type anything in this password box, because it's required, now it shows up as green. That is the valid pseudo selector of CSS. There is also an input invalid, right? And then maybe let's make this background color light pink, right? So now you can see by default these are showing up as red because they're invalid right now. As soon as I type something in, that turns to green. If I type an extra letter, now it goes back to red. If I take out one of these dashes, it goes to red. So another cool thing that we can do, we didn't talk about this in the patterns, one of our special characters is the question mark. Question mark. So what if we wanted to accept social security number either as all digits or all or as all, let's see if this works. See? Okay, cool. So if I was to type in 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, right, that's a valid social. But also valid would maybe be no. Let's take out these brackets, these aren't working. If we put the question mark in here, this should, right, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Yeah, so the question mark says, if the preceding character in this pattern, in this case the dash, it can either be there or not be there. Either one will be fine. So the question mark is kind of like, does it exist or not? Yes or no? We don't know. So the question mark is another useful thing to put in these types of regular expression patterns. So we could do the same thing with any of these, right? If we wanted to capture a phone number, right? Another great example, zip. We can do pattern equals, and we'll do right /d, and we know that it starts with a 5, right? It has to be 5 digits for a U.S. zip code. But then I'm going to put this in brackets here, right? So then I'm going to say it can be. How would we do this? Let's see. Or has to be 5 digits, and then sometimes it is also, 4 digits, and we'll put a question mark around that as well. Right. So it's going to be 5 digits always. That part is first. Then maybe there's sometimes a question mark, and if there's sometimes a question mark, then there's sometimes 4 digits. So let's come in here and see if we can do this. 30824. That didn't work. Let's see. How do we do this? Probably have to put the whole thing in one of these, huh? Okay. 30824. Okay, so that's perfect. I put a dash in, and then I put 4444. Then it becomes accurate again. So I made an entire sub question that says sometimes there is a dash and then 4 more digits, and I put a question mark after the end of that. So when I group these with parentheses in a pattern like this, I'm saying, treat this as like one option, and then that whole option is either there or not there. Does that make sense, everybody? So this is valid, and this is valid, but not that, and not, just 6 digits, or 2 digits, 3 digits. So this pattern is really powerful in letting us tell our users what we expect out of them. And you could use the same sort of technique up here. You can say title must be a valid U.S. zip code, right? Whatever that means. And so if I just put in, right, and then click create account, I gotta put something in here, right? 00, 0. Got to put in a password, right? And then I click create account, right? Must be a valid US zip code. So there's all kinds of cool things like this that we can do in here. Now we can also, by default, right there, just like with the invalid and valid pseudo selectors, we can say input required, and we can maybe say border 2px solid red. Okay, so now the ones that are required on our form have a red border. The ones that are not required are optional. Those are green. Like we can still 000, 000, right? I can still submit my page even with no zip code in there because that wasn't marked as required. But if I put some information in here, it has to match the pattern. Does that make sense? So these attributes are extremely useful for helping you build code without having to write a whole bunch of JavaScript in the back end. I use these types of these types of attributes required, sometimes with the min, sometimes with the max, for things that are like small forms, sign-in forms, create an account forms, all those sorts of things, because they're going to work great on a mobile client, they're going to work great on a mobile browser, if you're on a phone, on a tablet, all of that stuff works great on all those devices. When I'm going to go back to writing actual old school JavaScript validation is if it's like a big form with a bunch of complicated logic that I can't capture in HTML. So if I'm checking, the value of, one good example is, if you're doing a username, for example, right? You maybe want to have it so that as I type in my username, it goes behind the scenes and says, does this username already exist? I'm sure you guys have seen that, where you have a little spinning bubble, and it'll say, checking username, and it'll give you a green check mark. Hey, ERH is available. You'd still have to do that in JavaScript. We can't do that in HTML. We have to still write something on the back end to say, hey, is this username available? But when we get into JSON tomorrow and we start talking about APIs and writing code to touch remote servers, you'll see that that's just as easy to write as all this stuff, right? It would just be, like 8 lines of code to check if the username is available. We've covered a ton today. What questions do you have? Go ahead.
Was there a way to validate if your password and then the validating passwords, if they match? Would you just use the pattern If,
No.
or can you do that on the HTML side?
No, you won't be able to do that input level validation where you're checking both to make sure they're the same.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if for whatever reason you didn't want to write JavaScript in a script file like this, you could always, right? So you mark this one as required, and then you can say, all right, so that's going to make sure that you put something in the password box, and then you can come in here and simply say, you know, on blur equals. Or I would maybe even just do it as an on submit. You can say like on submit return this dot password equals this dot verify password, right? So this is still writing JavaScript, but we're saying on the submit thing, it's either going to return true or false. So either this password matches that password, or it's not going to let you submit the form. Almost always, there's only a few cases where you make someone verify they're putting in the same thing. Sometimes, like if you're entering your checking account information, and it'll be like, put in your routing number again, right? And then passwords. Those are like the two things I can think of in 20-something years of doing this where I've actually needed to verify like some secret box twice. I'm just going to write JavaScript to check it. And put it inside, you know, some kind of nice mechanism like this that will display what they did wrong, focus them on that element, maybe change the color. That's what I would do. There's no built-in HTML mechanism that I know of that will compare two inputs to see if they're correct. I could be wrong, and that could be something that maybe, you know, is coming eventually. Maybe it's something that already exists but doesn't work in all browsers. I don't know. We could look it up, but I'm sure everyone will just tell you use JavaScript. Any questions about any of those HTML validation? I'm going to share with you guys some links tonight because we are going to have some homework on regular expressions because it's like one of those things you probably just want to practice it a few times just to like get a sense for how it flows. There's a really cool like regular expression type of exercise game where it works through a couple different patterns. Kind of like the flex block authority, but not as cute. Let's pull it up while we're here. Let's work. Yeah, it's on regex 1, right? So that it gives you, match this pattern, right? And so they're kind of showing you what to do, right? So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? Or A through Z. Dot. What would it be? Oh, maybe I have to do. Okay, yeah, you just have to type it in here without the slashes, right? So A, B, C, D, E, F. Right. So A through Z. Star. Maybe you click on the solution. Let's see. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. How do they want you to put this in here? Plus one or more repetitions. Let's do this. A through Z plus. There you go. So they just want the regular expression format without the slashes like we were doing earlier. And they're showing you kind of a cheat sheet over here on the side of all the different patterns you could put together. So you click continue to go to the next lesson. So now they want you to match any number, right? Matching digits. So it'd be like /D plus. Right? That matches, we're good. And you go on through this. So this will be your homework for tonight, just to work through all these different lessons and read what they're asking of you and go through these exercises. Regular expressions are really useful. They'll come up everywhere. Anytime you're doing anything with text, oftentimes that's one of the only tools you'll have at your disposal to like make sure that something matches something else. And they come up in every programming language. So you'll see them all over the place. And it's such a weird syntax that it's just one of those things. Just practice it a little bit. Be familiar with kind of what it looks like, what it feels like, so that when it comes up, because it'll come up kind of randomly, like you'll spend a week working on nothing but regular expressions, then you won't touch it for a year. Just get comfortable with it. Be aware of what it looks like, so that when you go and read it the next time, you'll be like, oh, I remember now. Okay? So we'll submit that as homework. And other than that, did anyone have any other questions? Anything they wanted to talk about today? on anything we've covered? Go ahead, Olivia.
It's not on what we covered, but do we have a guest speaker tomorrow?
We do. Let's see who it is. CBC speakers. There we go. Tomorrow is former student. Oh no, that person canceled. So Mike Wales. So he's a former colleague of mine. We worked together at my previous company, Moonrise. He's the CTO, Chief Technology Officer of Moonrise. And he's going to talk to you a little bit about developer burnout, learning new technology, career progression, that sort of thing. So he's a real smart guy, and he's usually pretty interesting to listen to. Cool. Any other questions? Nope.
I have a quiz that I can
Um,
put out. You can check it out.
I'll check it out, and if it's good, we'll release it as well, just so that we have more stuff to practice with the work we did today. Other than that, if there's no other questions, we'll release the regular expression assignment right after this, and then you guys can start working on that, or we'll see you tomorrow, 3:30. And there might be a quiz as well. We'll check that tomorrow too. Okay. Oh man, this week is hard. We did it. We're almost done.